I've secretly been working on a multiplayer prison escape game for the last year. And when I say secret, like, I'm serious. Like, not even my buddy Craig back here has seen it. The game is called CUFFBUST, and like I said, it's a multiplayer prison escape game where you and your friends try to break out of prison by looting for tools, evading guards, and making a custom breakout plan. There's destructible environments, proximity chat, and hundreds of combinations of escape routes, because there's tons of different tools and interactivity that you can use to your advantage. But even though I've been working on this for like a year, it has not been easy getting to this point, and it's still in early development because I've never made a multiplayer game before. For the past 10 years that I've been making games, I've been terrified to even try. I may or may not. No, I definitely may regret my life decisions. So here's a little setup. It's July of 2023. Console porting for Choo-Choo Charles is well underway, and it's mostly in the hands of the porting studio. There's not really much that I had to do at this point. One day I was on Steam, and I saw Prison Architect, and I was like, dang, Prison Architect is a cool concept, isn't it, right? You get to make a prison. Prison is cool. That's epic. And I was thinking, you know, it'd be really cool if that game was 3D. And then I was thinking, wait, but what if you could, like, actually escape from the prisons with other people in first person? And then I knew what my new game was going to be. I immediately started working on laying stuff out and started writing up ideas. Started trying to come up with, like, some character designs, and I thought it would be really funny to have, like, these really evil, awful characters that are, like, cute. Basically like dollar store minions. So the first version of these cute criminal guys was a little bit goofy. He had like claws, and it wasn't really that cute. Looked like a Huggy Wuggy committed tax fraud. So I made a new concept that was a bit rounder, cleaner, cuter. Behind this innocent little face, bro, you have no idea what he's done. He's done the most unspeakable, the most evil. I can't even go into like why, but even if I just told you, I would be canceled. So that pretty much wrapped up the pre-production of the game. I had characters, I had gameplay, but now I actually had to make the game. Also, by the way, if you want a free copy of the game, because it is going to cost money when it comes out, but if you want a free copy, I'm going to be hiding Steam keys for the game in every single video that I make about CUFFBUST. So starting with this video, there's going to be 10 Steam keys hidden throughout the video. So if you're the first one to find a key and redeem it, then you'll get the game automatically for free when it releases. So keep your eyes peeled. So the first major milestone for the game was to basically make a full-on game template that I could use to build all of the other mechanics on top of. So this would require things like a networked player controller system. It needs a basic interaction and inventory system. It needs proximity chat. I need to set up a menu system, and I need to figure out a solid visual style. Then I can start building on all of the really cool stuff, like building out the prison environment and Gurjantins. Oh yeah, Gurjantins, baby. Gurjantins are freaking awesome. That's for a future devlog, though. First thing on the list is the player controller. I need a actual character model with character animations. So I started working on the player model, and I've never really made a player model. The closest thing that I've made is like a train body, which is not quite the same thing as like a humanoid JAILIEN character. By the way, that's what they're called. These guys are called JAILIEN because JAILIEN and aliens is Craig likes the name. He came up with it, actually. So the first time I tried using like normal kind of geometry in Blender, and it looked awful. It looked really freaking bad. So I completely scrapped it, tried again, and it looked even worse. Third time, I tried doing a completely different strategy, and I tried sculpting it. And sculpting is where, I mean, it's basically like digital clay. So I decided to give that a try, and that actually worked pretty well. Naturally, had to add a little bit of cake back there, if you know what I mean. Hey, let me get a slice of that, right? I'm just saying. Painted on like a little bit of like hair and skin texture, so that like his skin actually kind of looks a little bit more like skin, like flesh, and his clothes look more like clothes. I don't know why I'm explaining this. This is pretty dumb. I guess I'm explaining it for Craig here, because he's pretty stupid.
Why you bullying me?
So I put him into Unreal and set up the textures in there, and while these aren't finished, it was starting to look pretty decent. It was looking like a JAILIEN. Here he is flying. Yep, we could bow down to him. We bow down to epic JAILIEN, oh yes. Okay, so we've got a basic model, but that is like really just the beginning, because this is like, there's so much more left to do to get this guy actually moving around and animating and all this stuff. Before we can even animate him, we need to give him bones. When you're making a game, any animated character has bones, which are these specific, like, line things that are assigned different parts of the vertices, and they move them. Kind of like bones. So I added all the bones and got them set up so that I could start animating. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm going to explain some of the stuff with the art style that you saw in that test scene. So the last like 6 games that I've made have all been either horror or just had like a really dark mood. I've always had like sketchy hand-drawn graphics or some kind of like cluttered kind of feel. But for CUFFBUST, I want to try something completely different. Bold, colorful, bright, just like a complete opposite. So instead of using like the sharp hand-drawn style, I added all of these like bubbly, round, light and dark accents, but it still looked wrong, right? Like individual objects and textures looked nice, but the lighting in the scene and the placement was wrong. So it was still cluttered and messy. So I started experimenting with brighter lighting and a cleaner environment style, excluding like the massive sewer pipes that are like, you know, flooding the scene with sewage. What I had at this point was at least enough of a direction that I could start working on other stuff and be confident in the basics of the style. The bones of the style. Speaking of bones, let's get back to that animation stuff. I've also never really done 3D character animation. You see, I've always relied on Mixamo, and for this game, I need everything to be stylized. You can't really have a stylized, cartoony character with realistic mocap animations. It would look so goofy. I'll even show you. Here, this is what it would look like. It's like, I decided to start easy and just start out with an idle animation where he's just kind of like bobbing back and forth, just like, he's just vibing. So I brought that animation into Unreal Engine for some reason. His foot's doing weird stuff. Seems like a small issue, so I tried some slightly different settings. It just broke even more. So then I tried again, and so finally, after like way too many attempts, I got my workflow set up and I got all the settings correct. Next one, I tried adding a walk cycle. What the is that? Took a bit of time, but I got the hang of it and I started doing kind of a really bouncy kind of style. So now I've got the animations, right, for walking, running, crouching, jumping, and now I actually need to add them to a character that could do all that stuff. It can be all right. So first thing, I just wanted to see if I could even get 2 characters running around in the same map so that it's like technically multiplayer.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Pretty straightforward. I basically just clicked a couple buttons and add multiplayer, and hey presto, now I got a multiplayer game. I went ahead and added just a really basic menu system so that I could connect multiple players to the same server. I almost look like I know what I'm doing. Now I can actually start adding these animations. So I got idle animations in, and they work just fine. I got walking animations in, and they work, again, fantastic. And then I added crouching. I don't think you heard me. I added crouching. I said I added. I'm trying to knock this thing over for the bit, but it won't. I added crouching! So I calmly added crouching, and it works very epically. I love crouching. I love adding crouching to my games. Now the movement looks decent when you're watching other people moving around, but it also needs to look good from a first-person perspective. First thing, I added camera shake. Really simple, really easy. And the next thing to address was the camera angle, and this is where things got a little bit tricky. In CUFFBUST, I want people to be able to look down and see their body. Their sexy, caked-up, JAILIEN body. But adding a feature like that, I mean, it sounds simple, but that adds a lot of problems. Problem that's a little bit more unique to CUFFBUST is that when you look down, you can see your severed neck. When you're running, your body's like leaning forward and you're like lunging. So the first thing I tried to fix that was I just attached the camera to the neck. Horrific. Awful. Instead of trying to fix that, what I did is I softened the camera movement. And that basically just made the game third person, because now the body would basically just run away from the camera. So the solution I came up with was to add multiple different camera locations. One up here for when you're idle, one down in front of you for when you're sprinting forward, and one a little bit lower down for when you're crouching. And then the camera just smoothly interpolates between those points depending on which animation is playing. So with that in place, I went ahead and set up a more finalized menu system. So stuff with like game settings, key rebinds, and graphic settings, all that kind of stuff, as well as a better server creation method, a better server menu. And while working on the server creation system, I had kind of my first real dilemma with this project. So at first I had it set up to where you could just title the name of your server to be anything. You could just put in a custom string and then that would be the name of your server. But I've realized very quickly that people are obviously going to abuse that. So instead I made a system that generates a random server name every time that you create a public server. What it does is it takes your Steam username and then it adds a phrase onto the end of it. So for example, 2-star is under your bed, or 2-star can smell you, or 2-star licked my feet. I'm not joking, those are in the game. So right now there's a few hundred different combinations, but I want to blow that number up as high as I can. So leave a comment with a server name that you think would be funny and I'll add a bunch of them in the next devlog. You know, be sure to subscribe with notifications on to see if you get picked. And again, like, I want to add hundreds, so if you leave a comment, there's a pretty decent chance that you'll get picked. Progress on the game template is coming along well, but it's not done. There's still some major things that we need left, like proximity chat and our interaction system. So I looked around and I found a pre-made voice chat system, and I tried adding it to the game. And at first, I mean, it seemed like it worked well.
It is I.
I mean, within a half an hour, it was set up. After testing it out some more, there was this constant issue where the audio would cut out. Like basically every 2 or 3 seconds, it would just cut. It makes it pretty much impossible to communicate with people. All right, so this is how I, as a very professional video game developer, test if my voice chat is working. And we just hold that for a really long time to see how much the voice chat is cutting out. Then I try to change stuff. Then I test it more. We also got to test it at different volumes. So. Okay, enough of this. I hate my job. So I spent a week trying to troubleshoot this issue and trying to fix the code that was already there. I pushed at least like 50 individual versions of the game to try and test it. It got to the point where I had less brain cells than Craig. Sorry, Craig, but it's a fact. So after a week of trying to troubleshoot this thing, I just said, I'm not making any progress. This is not working at all. And I scrapped the entire thing and started from scratch. And it took me no more than 1 day to get it working perfectly. So now that I had the basic system functional, it was time to add all of the actual like proximity chat effects, which was really, really fun. So Unreal Engine 5 has a bunch of really good audio systems that most other engines just don't have. So the first thing I added was just a basic distance-based proximity chat. Then I added occlusion.
I am going to go behind this wall.
Then I made everything directional so you can actually hear the direction that a person is coming from. Then I added dynamic reverb.
You're on record. Alright.
Really, really cool, and it works super well in game. I'm like, could not be happier with it. So for the indications, I added these little mouth sprites that go meep, 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 meep. And another thing that I thought was pretty fun is I added a yelling animation.
Oh my gosh, is that a spider? It's on your face. Oh my gosh!
Now there's just a few things left before we finish the whole template and can start working on the actual big game itself. I added an inventory and interaction system, and it was basically just a bunch of random, boring programming and networking stuff that was very boring and repetitive. Yes, I'm just not really gonna go into it. And now last thing, we gotta polish it all up with some new lighting, new textures, and jiggle physics. Craig's excited about that one. Also, real quick before we add those jiggle physics, I just want to let you know that you can wishlist CUFFBUST on Steam right now to get notified when it releases. My current goal is for CUFFBUST to become one of the top 200 most wishlisted games, and once we hit that goal, I'm going to give away a bunch of extra Steam keys and a devlog. So, you know, subscribe to stay tuned for that and wishlist the game. That's it. It would make Craig like really happy. It would make his day. I'm just saying. So now we're on the final step of completing this milestone. First thing I did is I added blinking to make the characters feel a bit more dynamic. Then I also did a bunch of way too complicated math. Like this, it looks so simple, but this took me like multiple attempts and multiple days to get the math right on this. And it's basically just to make it so that when you look side to side, your body will stay still as the head moves. Then I touched up the textures for the character. And lastly, I added jiggle physics, baby, let's go. So I thought it'd be fun to have these dynamic ears that just kind of like move and flop all around. Turns out Unreal Engine's jiggle physics system is incredibly robust. So it took a little bit of time to get the tuning right, but I think it turned out great, and it makes, again, that combined with the blinking and the head movement, it makes the characters feel so much more dynamic and alive, and it's really, really cool. And that is where I left off milestone 1 for CUFFBUST. Also, the full trailer for the game just dropped. Quick secret for just you guys watching this, but I actually hid 10 Steam keys for the game in the trailer as well. I'll be uploading more devlogs really soon because honestly, this was just the beginning. I've got a ton more stuff to show off. Subscribe for more videos about the game, wishlist on Steam, and Gurjantin.